It's showtime. Hello,
Hello.
everybody.
Good morning.
Welcome to
Afternoon.
Good morning, good
Maybe
day,
evening.
good afternoon. All of those things. Good time of day.
Yes.
Welcome to Ubuntu On Air. This is another Community Office Hours live stream with myself, Rhys Davis, on the community team at Canonical, developer advocate, and Monica.
Monica Ahans-Madden, Ubuntu community representative. Hello.
And we are here on the Ubuntu On Air YouTube channel where we talk about community things, we talk to community people, and we highlight all the things that are going on in the community and hopefully provide new people and old-time community members with a little bit of an update and an insight as to what's going on. Like as per usual, I'm going to do a little bit of community news. We're going to talk a little bit about stuff that's going on, and then we'll introduce our lovely guest, who will be introduced in a second, so I'm not going to say her name now, but you probably know it already. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is the wallpaper competition that we've been talking about for a few weeks now. Voting closes tomorrow morning UK time. So that'll be, I think I said it was 9 a.m. UTC. So that gives us time to figure things out and get the winners together before the afternoon.
Yeah, so basically, all you night owls in the States, get your voting in tonight.
Totally.
Yep.
And then we have a few other newsy things.
We
Monica,
do. Yesterday we had a very important birthday. Linux turned 30, and there were some really great stories and people sharing their experience, whether they've been with Linux from the start or whether they're pretty recent to it. So it was great to see the online celebration for it, which was great. So here's for a great 30s, and be exciting when Linux turns 40. God, that's going to be in a while. So there was that.
10 years.
And we also, last week we had two Ubuntu on airs, because last Friday we had Rudra from the Ubuntu Unity Remix, who did his first community-hosted, community-driven stream and about setting up dev environments in Unity X and Unity 7. We are going to be welcoming him about once a month. We're really excited. We also have in our Twitch chat our next community host, Yannick Murray, is going to be talking to us about setting up, let's see if I can remember this, PHP and Angular environments. Let's see if I've got that. And he is going to be doing a bi-weekly stream on Tuesdays, and we are really excited about some of the things. And if we'll also provide a link to his channels so you can kind of get an idea of what he will be doing. And as usual, we do have a call for content on discourse. Rhys, if you could maybe find that link. And if you have an idea for a stream you want to host on Ubuntu On Air, let us know, and we'll be more than happy to set you up.
More than happy. We love the idea of giving more of the keys to Ubuntu On Air out to community members who are doing interesting, cool things, especially things like Yannick's doing that can help the community. And so, yeah, we want more people to be doing those things. But starting with the wonderful Rudra and the wonderful Yannick, I think, is a good place to go.
Oh, yeah.
Beyond that, we have the next desktop Indaba with Heather tomorrow, where she'll be joined by Till and I believe
Michael
someone else
Sweet.
from the Michael Sweet from the Open Printing.
The inventor of cups.
The inventor of cups. So if you have anything that you might ever want to know about printing and Linux and all these things, those are the people to ask.
The two people to ask. It's gonna be awesome.
And at the end of the Indaba tomorrow, either Heather or Monica or someone will be announcing the winners of the wallpaper competition, because it'll hopefully only take an afternoon to put all that together. And we'll be featuring all of the winners, all 10 winners, in a blog post and in social media. And the top two, the winning two, will make their way into the 2110 release image. Very exciting. And then the last thing I want to mention before we get our guest in is next week we'll be finalizing and publishing the new membership application process. So if you know anyone, if you're a member already, but you know anyone who wants to be a member or who might want to be a member, let them know. And we'll have some instructions and some blog posts going out next week for all of those cool things. Yeah, I'll be testing the process myself at some point. It's very exciting. Yes. Okay.
Don't worry, just ask, and I will leave you a very nice testimonial.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Have you got anything else to add before we get in?
That is all I can think of.
Well, in that case, if you have any questions, leave them in the chat, or if you're watching not live, leave them in the discourse thread that's linked below. And without further ado, let me introduce the wonderful Léïa. Hello, Léïa.
Hi,
You're
Léïa.
muted. Go ahead and introduce yourself. You're muted.
You're muted.
Oh.
Léïa, you're muted. We can't hear you.
You're muted. Yeah. There we go.
I'm not really good at introduction.
You looked very excited and enthusiastic.
I am very excited and very enthusiastic to be here. But yeah. My name is Léïa, and I work as a content marketing manager at Canonical, and so I am here about that. And
I'm here about
today.
Great. Like always, when we have Canonical people in, Canonical hats are off, Ubuntu contributor hats are on. And so our first question is usually and always, if you could just tell us a little bit about your experience with Ubuntu, when you first started using Ubuntu.
Sure. Well, so I think there was like two distinct introduction to Ubuntu. The first one was when I was a kid. My dad was tinkering with the computer and stuff like this. And so we had Ubuntu on the family desktop. So that was kind of like my first introduction to it. And then I got introduced to it a second time as a tool for developing during my engineering studies, when I had to set up VMs with Ubuntu running on them and setting up this kind of stuff. That's my experience with it.
Do you remember what releases, what versions they were when you were on the family desktop and when you were in school? No,
I have no memory of what particular release it was, but
nice. Okay,
that's 2014 for the school one, 2015. So around that time. And kid, I really don't remember. So
no.
Earlier in the alphabet, definitely.
Yeah,
for sure.
Somewhere in there. It's cool. So you have experience with Ubuntu. You work with Canonical. Yeah. Do you have any experience with other sort of open source things and other different types of communities? I know some people who've come on have not just talked about technology communities, but other communities that they're involved in, things like art and design and this kind of thing.
So that's okay. So I'm going to try to take it chronologically, even though I already forgot what's the first part. Over open source. Open source. So I'm actually more familiar with the AI ML open source tools. Not that I know how to use them flawlessly or whatever.
Still, that's really interesting, though.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and I love it because one of the things that I really like is artificial intelligence in general. And so I try to pick my place to work according the fact if they do artificial intelligence or not. And so the first company I worked for they were working on artificial intelligence project. And there was a lot of open source stuff like PyTorch, TensorFlow, this kind of stuff. And that was really interesting. More of that. And as to like wider communities and other type of communities, so yeah, if I once knew how to develop things, I completely forgot by then. So no technical communities per se, but yeah, as we said, lots of artsy stuff.
What kind of
things.
artsy stuff?
A lot. Like I do painting, I do engraving, I do embroidering, sewing, and lots of stuff.
Yes, we definitely need to have an Ubuntu cross stitch group. So, yeah,
I agree with that.
Mhm.
Like we can like embellish Ubuntu T-shirt, like all that
And-
kind of stuff.
You know what? And if anything, I think the crafting communities like also embody that spirit of open source, because if you think about like a knitting pattern or a cross stitch pattern, that it's open source, and it's, you're free to, you know, take that. And I mean, think of how many knitting patterns have been forks of other ones, and you can kind of, I mean, and if there was like, oh my gosh, like if Ravelry was on GitHub and you could be like, okay, I like this pattern, let's fork it, let's change it.
Yeah.
And it would be fascinating to see all the different versions that you get.
Definitely.
But it's also neat to see how many people in the open source communities are also into making and crafting in these kind of more, what we think of more traditionally with crafts. So
yeah, I think on top of that, there's like a big resurgence of that recently, probably because of the pandemic. It's like you need to keep your hands occupied so your mind doesn't go into
oh my god, like it's a great fidget tool. But anyway, yay, that's really great. And I love, speaking of our next week, our guest next week also combines technology and arts too. So yeah,
looking forward to that then.
as much as it would be great to make this all about crafts and cross stitching, I'm going to try and move back to marketing. I love a good cross stitch. I love a good craft. Don't get me wrong, but we're here to talk about open source marketing and stuff. And so before we get into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be discussing, Léïa, could you just tell us a little bit about your background in marketing, what marketing is, because I've heard it described in the UK as a couple of different things, as marketing, communications, and this kind of thing. Can you just give us the lay of the land?
Sure. So, so I did engineering studies. I'm technically an engineer, energy and environmental energy type of engineer. But I ended up going towards marketing and communication because, well, I'm not super into big corporate world. So initially I wanted to work in research, but the research field is also pretty tough. And I was not about that life. And that's about when I realized that a lot of really great projects and really great ideas are just completely lost in translation because, well, geeky technical people sometimes don't know how to simplify what they're working on. And it's super hard to help the wider audience understand why it's so cool and why you should care and why it matters, you know? So I realized that I had like this unique perspective. It's not unique at all, but like this kind of skill set that was working in my favor in that case because I could understand what they were talking about and what they wanted to like put out. And I also understood like more layman people and like what kind of topic could be related to it. So yeah, it would make it interesting and accessible. So that's how I got into marketing.
That's awesome, because there's so many ideas and concepts that are inherently really great, but if they're not communicated well, then it's so much of that value gets lost. And so it's really great that you had both the ability to understand it, but then that ability to, like, how do we get this out to people who aren't us and make them as excited as we are?
Yeah, it's the thing that I love about it is that it's all about like listening and asking questions a lot. So it's very exciting because you get to discover lots of interesting things. You talk to a lot of interesting people, and you get to, I don't know, communicate and share exciting stuff. So that's very exciting. So yeah.
Super exciting, and we'll talk a little bit about things like things like communications and accessibility and so on and so forth. And like someone says in the chat there, interesting accessible is something that is sorely needed in the FOSS sort of marketing community, in the FOSS sort of marketing place. But could you just define the difference here between marketing and communicating, if there is one?
So in my mind, there's not really, but it's true that when I started, because I'm originally from France, but when I started interviewing for a position in the UK, there was actually a difference between marketing and communication. And marketing is more of the act of distributing the content in a way that is efficient and generate leads, basically. So that's a lot of like ads, email campaigning, all the techniques that you can use. And communication is more about like the art of storytelling. Not that there's not an art in marketing either, but it's like more focused on the writing, telling a story, communicating basically. So yeah, technically, I'm right now with more like I'm in the marketing team, but I'm in the comms team. So I'm more comms than marketing. We lie to you.
We also do wear lots of multiple hats here.
Yeah. That's a bunch of things.
So what do you do what is it that you do on like a daily, weekly basis?
So again, I talk with a lot of cool people. So I help
Obviously.
Exactly.
So humble.
I help. At Canonical, the people that are writing the most of the content are the PMs, so the product managers. So I help them figure out how to spin their content and what they should write about and how they should write about. So again, it's accessible and interesting, while still like meeting our objectives and stuff like this. But yeah, it's really about finding what the people are interested in and finding how we can provide the information that people are looking for. So yeah, that's
totally okay. So it's finding, providing, and communicating that kind of information through things like content and so on. And
content.
What would be super interesting to hear about, since it's in the title of the stream, is how that relates to open source and how it differs from normal comms and marketing to open source, to comms and marketing for open source type things. Is there like a philosophy? Is it actually different, or is it really just the same?
I think it is different, and I also think it comes probably from the philosophy of open source as well, which is very respectful and like working together, not like trying to take advantage of each other or something like this. Because in my mind, there's like different type of. My hair is very interesting. There is different type of marketing that you can do. There is like the very aggressive newsletter in your inbox every 2 days, which nobody likes, and there is the more subtle but still marketing, like Red Bull sponsoring sports event and this kind of things. So it's all in the. I believe it's all in the intent that you have behind it. If it's like you genuinely think what you're doing is great and you just want the people to be able to enjoy what you're doing and just like help them genuinely, that makes a whole difference between that and you just want people to click on your thing and have the maximum revenue, whatever. And so particularly, like I've seen the different styles in my vast and long career. And I feel like it works the best when you're genuine and you're just like trying to answer questions. And so in that sense, in the open source community, that's a lot of, we're not trying to hide anything. We're super upfront about like what we're doing, why we're doing it, how we're doing it, and like what we use to do it. And that's in my mind very nice and makes it less sucky to have to, be labeled as a marketing person.
Yeah, because
there's stigma around it.
so there definitely are some of those less than savory kind of stereotypes and preconceptions about marketing. So when you started moving into the marketing field, like, did you have to kind of wrestle with those?
So I always worked for small scale projects, so either labs or startups. So that conception is not so much there.
Oh, that's
but it's
good.
True, that when you're like reconnecting with, I don't know, people that I went to school with or like had my engineering degree with, there can be a little bit of a, but like, why do you decide to just like dump the superior sciencey things and just like go for
Soft,
whatever
squishy things?
this exactly, like soft mushy things? We don't do that. So yeah, if you give me 30 seconds, I'm gonna close my window because somebody decided to cut their trees.
Go ahead.
It's like it's kind of a given. Well, it's good to know wherever she lives, they're doing tree maintenance, but we clearly need to let them know our schedule.
Yeah, I mean, it's very inconsiderate of people to be doing anything during this. They should just do the stream.
I don't know. It's like the middle of the day. Don't you have stuff to do?
You have stuff to do?
Cutting trees, but yeah.
Also, that seems like a really hot time of day to cut trees, like early morning or.
Yeah, well, it's the UK here, so
it's never a hot time of day here. Yeah. So that's stereotypes and bad associations are one thing, right? But it affects you, but it also affects how people get into it. I've spoken to other people at Canonical who've said the similar thing, and they've very much felt like doing marketing is great and they really enjoy it, and it's just something that they're passionate about. But as a sort of external thing, they don't like when people sort of call them that. It's almost like a name calling. But I think as long as, like you were saying before about philosophy and how you go about it, as long as you're genuine about it, because it's not that people don't like people marketing. It's like people that don't like people shoving stuff down their throat, right?
Exactly. And I guess that's a nice segue to kind of like the ethical marketing side of things, which is like, there are so many techniques out there that you can use to track people down from like the tiniest details and stuff like this. But you can also decide not to use that and be like, this is not good. I don't like when someone is doing that to me. Why would I do the same thing to someone else? So yeah, that's like, for example, in our case, Canonical, we don't use like very invasive software with like lots of trackers or whatever. We have like very basic settings with like Google Analytics, and that's almost pretty much it. Which I really appreciate, and that's also one of the reasons why I think it's nice not to just like brag about it.
Follow people,
but
invade people.
No, I genuinely, because that's one part of the marketing experience that I feel is not, I don't like it at all. And that's also probably why some people don't like when you just like say, oh, you're marketing. Because yeah, you have a lot of unsavory methods associated to it. You're like, yes, but also no, I don't do that. I don't collect all your information to then just like track you on every single platform you're going for and with the same ad 10 times in a row.
Yeah, it's amazing. Like when you see like just like those hyper targeted ads, and thankfully I think that there have been more conversations, especially in the past few years, that are coming along more to this ethical marketing side. It's like, yes, we can track you and give you super scary, accurate ads, but we could also, like you said, we could also just not do that.
Yes, and I think that's the way to go.
And,
is that?
Yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, okay. So it's like maybe with the discussion around like data and protecting your personal information and this kind of things, that's maybe gonna change, but I'm not super super hopeful about it. So that's why I feel like it's on the professional side of the barrier to just be like, okay, well, choose not to do that, because legislation might not be enough to prevent that, basically.
Is that something you can... Go ahead, Monica, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Saying just better not to have the data in the first place.
Yes.
Exactly. Take it away. Is that something that you can talk about? I didn't check with any of the bosses, but is the kind of non-invasive and ethical marketing tactics that Canonical uses something that you can talk about?
Maybe not like in super detail, because actually I'm not the one doing that part. So there are plenty of people more qualified than that may come in the future. Wink, wink. But
wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Exactly, nudge, nudge. Yeah. So as I said, we don't use software that allows us to track down super precisely people. We just measure intent on our pages. Like, for example, we have tools like Crazy Egg. It's like, I don't know, similar to Hotjar, which it helps you having like a heat map of your website. So you can see like where are the areas that are gathering attention, where do people scroll down. So yeah, I feel like the techniques we use are more based on us rather than outward facing. It's like we're analyzing how we are perceived, not how people are perceiving us in a way. Because this doesn't feel invasive in the way.
How we're perceived, not perceiving them, right? Because it's not collecting user data. It's just looking at how they're approaching.
How many people came? What region of the world are they a part of? The language of their browser, this kind of stuff.
Yeah, kind of where they click on the site.
Yeah, like how many people click there, this kind of stuff. We actually start like actual marketing activities on the initiative of the people that are on our website. And we only do that against piece of content that we work hard on. So we try to really like give value back to the people, because there's also something that is a little bit tricky to convey sometimes. It's like we also need to do business at some point. So the marketing is a necessary step towards that. And it's not necessarily that we absolutely want to leech off of what you're giving us, but it's just like, yeah, if we think that you might have a legitimate interest, yeah, we're going to be reaching out to you or something like this. But it's only when you have explicitly expressed that legitimate interest that we're going to reach out and like start a conversation, basically.
Yeah.
Well, you signed up for something or provided those details yourself, right?
Yeah, exactly.
As saying like, please contact me.
Yeah. And if you say, please don't contact me, we won't contact you. That's fine. It's okay.
So we understand you don't want to hear from us.
Exactly. It's like, we're super fine. But it's, I'm a firm believer that if what you put out is of quality and it helps people, you don't need to chase them down to just like work with them. They're just going to realize. You just need to make them realize afterwards. They'll know what to do.
So for people who are either listening now or in the future, if they're in maybe some, because I see that some of these things could also be used not only for companies like ours, but for open source projects.
Yeah.
Is there any advice that you would give them about how to better market their projects in these kind of ways?
Well, the first thing that I keep on repeating, and I'm pretty sure some people here are like tired of hearing me saying this, but it's like, just think about the people you're supposed to be helping with what you're doing. And you need to understand them first before doing anything else. If you don't have a clear idea, of at least a vague idea of what people are looking for, or like what they're expecting, you are very likely to miss the, like, not hit the nail on the head, basically. So if you did that project, if you worked on that project, that's because you had something that you wanted to solve, and you think that other people might have the same problem. And so that's, like, technology is great, and talking about the technical details of what you're doing is amazing too, and you should. But it is more important to talk about what you're solving and what you're doing for the people than saying how you're doing it. So, So yeah, that's my first advice. Think about, like, what the people want, what you do for them, figure out how to give that across. The best platform for you to do that. That might be LinkedIn if you're corporate, but that might be something completely different if you're not in that sphere. And that's that.
I'll be right back. I have to go discipline one of my friend's cats who is doing something they're not supposed to be doing. Gently, more just getting them off the counter where they're chewing things up. Keep talking.
We'll do that.
So if that kind of thing, that's the first bit of advice for people wanting to maybe do a bit of promotional type things. Are there any sort of I don't know, terms or techniques that are sort of that would work best for open source? I know we've talked before, and you've mentioned things like participative marketing and user generated stuff. Is that?
Yeah.
Could you talk about
so that's part of it. I think. So I think one thing we can start with is like the concept of funnel. So, but that's
okay.
So yeah, it's like you have to figure out what you want the people that discover you to do, because that can be to subscribe to your newsletter, to subscribe to your channel, to buy your product, or to contribute to your product. And once you have an idea of like you want to achieve, that's where you start to figure out like what kind of activities you need to put in place to have like a healthy funnel, which is like a kind of a way to acquire an audience and traffic that is going to help you achieve your goal. And so I feel like in open source, one of the, at least on the community open source side, one of the best things you can do is helping people figure out that it's easy to contribute, and you like it's very valuable for you and for the others. And so in that regards, I feel like one of the ways, the methods, marketing methods that are very nice for that is participative marketing or user-generated content, which is basically having people, well, a little bit like you guys are doing with Ubuntu on Air, having people take over the content generation, because this way, you know for sure that it's going to reflect what the people are wanting, because they're using it. And that's usually really great, because that serves multiple purposes. So addressing the target for sure, but also just like making the community a dynamic place to be, and just sharing different perspectives that you might not have yourself, and giving more more platform, more share of voice to people that might not have it in the first place.
Yeah, there's from my involvement in our community, we have some members who are peripheral to our community, but they hang out there. And one of them is in the R language community. And I got to see one of their streams where he does one of their weekly newsletters. And what they do is they take blog posts and tutorials and other things that people have posted. And so it was really neat for to watch them as they chose kind of what we're going to highlight, how we're going to get it out there. And so not only was the newsletter itself part of that user generated or community generated content, but also the stream showing here's how we pick and here's how we put it together. That itself is content too.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Everything is content.
Everything is content. Hashtag everything is content. Were you going to say something?
No, but I was like, yeah, that's another marketing term if you want, like content marketing. That's all the rage lately. I mean, lately
It's all the rage.
But
It's
interesting because
it works.
Because it works, right? It's interesting because, like you were saying before, like what we're doing with Ubuntu on Air, there's an interesting sort of parallel or connection between marketing and communications and community management. Because a lot of what we do is communicating, which is a lot of what you do, and figuring out how to properly or best approach and communicate to users and developers and get people on board, right? Where do you think, if there is a line, where do you think that line is between that kind of community/audience management versus marketing's communication?
Yeah, in my mind, it's all semantics, and it also depends like on your end goal and your audience in a way. Because if you do that in the corporate world, it's not necessarily a community that you're building, but it's just a label type of thing. Because in the end, you still organize trade fairs. You still have case studies where your client is coming to talk about what kind of solution you created for them, and so on. So in a way, it's very similar. It's just you don't have necessarily the same outcome at the end. But it's I feel like community building is a resource that is very helpful regardless of whether you're doing advocacy or marketing or communication or anything really. It's good to know how to connect to people and help them feeling seen and heard and get them to contribute with you on something. So
it's interesting because all of the words you just said in the sort of marketing context map directly to community type things, because trade shows are just like developer conferences or events, and communicating to them through LinkedIn is just tweeting on Twitter and these kinds of things, right? And then to get whatever solution you're trying to do, instead of a corporate solution, you're just communicating like a new process or a new way of contributing. It's
because people are people. It's like they might work in a corporate environment, but in the end they're still people, and you still crave the same thing as a hobbyist in their garage. That's the same thing.
Ice cream.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes. And it's interesting because so much of that community building is kind of also what happens outside of those things. And part of our roles are to have environments where people can come together over and over that shared interest. To borrow, I think that's a community definition. Well, they're like, there's a lot of definitions of community, but here's what works for us from a book called Get Together. And if you think like, I'm here in Denver because we had a Linux meetup on Friday, and it was basically kind of like the social part of a conference, just without the conference. And it's powerful and it's so hard because we're not really able to do that yet. And, or else if we can, it has to be really limited and small. But bringing people together to have that energy and excitement and see those ties that you've been building up online kind of turn into kind of real life or in-person connections too is a really powerful thing. And so I think having spaces where people, and spaces either physical or virtual, that are friendly and open and accessible for people to come and do whatever it is that your community does together. And you're right, there's a lot of marketing and communication about why this community is important, and here's why it could be a good thing for you if this is kind of your jam.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. We all want the same thing.
I know.
Which is, I guess, part of the next thing, right? Because we talked about marketing of open source things, and a little bit about the sort of perception of marketing in general. But what's the biggest issue at the moment of marketing in open source? Is it the bad perspectives? Is it the bad sort of stereotypes of things, or is it more? Or is it still generic and people are just still competing against each other rather than doing it in an open source way?
I feel there is like a lot of facets to that issue, because again, there is like the corporate versus community, and in that setting, there is still a lot of misconception about what is open source, how secure it is, how reliable it is. Like, is it serious, or is it like just a bunch of hippies writing codes in their garage or whatever? Like, it's still like you still have to fight that, even though this is really weird because a lot, like most of technology right now has open source or is built on open source at some point. Yet a lot of people are just still thinking about open source as like small build project with like a small tight community, not really like being big.
Not really there, not really having an effect.
Yeah.
But when it's not true. And it's a very interesting phenomenon to witness yourself, because it's like, you're using Kubernetes. Why do you tell me that open source is not?
Yeah.
It's like, excuse me, sir. I have something to tell you.
Like, have you seen the Kubernetes Slack group? It's kind of enormous.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, that part is very fun, having to convince people that it's a thing and it's not just a phase, mom, or something like this. And so on the community side, that's also pretty interesting, because you have to keep that balance of authenticity, being straightforward and being honest as to what you're trying to do. And sometimes some of the open source community can be very harsh and pretty like strict on what is okay, what is not okay. And sometimes it's a little bit difficult to navigate that, because even if you mean well, you can still make mistakes, I guess.
Yeah. And it's just owning them.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's a lot about, well, not everybody can like you, first of all, so that's fine. And second of all, it's just like, be true to yourself and be honest, and don't try to sneak things under the cover of making a good action for the community or something like this.
Yeah.
Is that perspective? Is that? Oh, sorry. Were you? Go ahead.
No, I was about to go in right to the third point, which is like, in general, I also think like there is also the like daunting aspect of open source, which is like, we talked about that just a little bit before, but do I like, how can I contribute, but also, is what I'm going to contribute going to be enough, or does it matter if I'm getting rejected 10 times in a row because I'm just starting, I'm a baby developer and I'm trying my best, but like, I'm greatest. And it's like, it's also a little bit hard to make sure that you're fostering and putting out content that is helping to mitigate this kind of risks, I guess. Yeah,
there's a lot of imposter syndrome in our communities with people, and it's surprising because you talk to some people who you think would be the most confident people in open source, and it turns out that they have those same feelings of, man, it's like, am I really good at this? If people only knew. And so I think just, I think having kind of more seasoned people kind of share that, yes, this is common. they felt this, they sometimes still feel this, and yes, your contributions are valuable and wanted.
It's interesting. I think there's a lot of it because of the sort of breadth of what's possible, because how broad and wide open source is. Even if you're very good at something specific, for a fact it's very, very, very likely that there's someone out there who's going to know it more than you, know it better than you, kind of thing. And so with being accessible to so many people, really has that effect of, oh well, someone else could do this better, And is that something, because that's something I imagine that Canonical should be super aware of, because you don't only have to market or communicate about your products or about the things that you're working on, but you also have to uphold that. You have that responsibility to the open source and the open source community to almost market that ideal as well, right?
Yes, and like in my mind, we're not necessarily we're not marketing against other open source vendors, project, whatever. We're championing open source versus not open source, basically. And just opening that window for more and more people. Just showcasing that it's possible, you can do it too, and it's fun, and it's going to be probably the way that more and more projects are going to be built in the future anyway. So
Interesting. There's I should say that before we begin, I should say that if anyone has any questions or anything like that, stick them in the chat or put them in the comments or in the discourse, and we'll get to them. But just off of what you just said, there's lots of going forward. There's going to be lots of. I think it's widely accepted. There's going to be lots of new projects. There's lots of new open source projects and ways of doing things. And one of the things that I wanted to ask about was if you had any thoughts or things to point people to, any resources on how a brand new little baby project could do the kind of marketing and comms without having a team or without having people to do it specifically.
Yeah, well, it's kind of good and bad because there's so many things on marketing and this kind of things out there. I kind of learned that way. I didn't really receive the proper marketing training, so it was a lot of trial and error. And I mean, if you want, in terms of basis for tools, I guess one thing for marketing strictly that you can do is the Google Analytics university online program, whatever. It's very good. It's very interesting, and it's helpful. But then, besides that, I think actually UX design are really great for marketing because, again, it's not about you. It's about the people you want to help, and you need to understand them, know how to cater to their needs, and understand their pain points, frustration, and goals, basically. And from there, it's a lot of common sense. So yeah, it's and identifying your channels and this kind of things. But on that note, you have a lot of content that is available online, and I think there's Neil Patel or something like this. He has a blog on marketing that is pretty interesting, and some free tools for keyword search, topic trending, this kind of things, which is the equivalent of Moz but for free. So there is a lot of nice resources there. And then for the more UX design advice, I would say the Nielsen and group. I need to check.
Not gonna be able to find that one, but cool.
Yeah.
We'll put it in the discourse post.
Yeah, Nielsen Norman group, because I know it's NN group, but I never remember what's the name of that. But yeah, and that's already a good start, I think.
Excellent. We like things to read.
Yeah, we totally like things to read. Nice.
Frankly, the Nielsen and Norman resources are amazing because there's like so many cool just concept in general, because that makes a little bit of neuroscience with usability and like ergonomics and whatever, and it's pretty nice.
Cool.
Yes.
Cool. And is there a way that kind of thing and what you've talked about in sort of open source marketing links in with sort of the success stories? Because whenever I think of successful sort of marketing or successful organizations, if you think of like Airbnb is always the one that comes to mind, because they started with like next to no marketing. They just got the people in a mattress and did all these things and raised some money and got things out there and did a lot of word of mouth type of things. And obviously in a COVID world, that kind of word of mouth is a little bit different. It's still there obviously because you've got virtual communication and so on. But is that something that what are your thoughts on all of that kind of thing?
As in
that's a broad question.
As in, what did I experience a success like this, or do I know how to think about how to go about creating success like this, or did I see success like this in Canonical? I don't know. I'm not too sure.
The second one. What do you think about success like that, and then how do you think what we talked about so far changes with regards to how has it changed with the coronavirus and the pandemic and so on?
So again, broken record, but that's all about the people. But I think I actually read an article from these guys and how they started and how they thought about their system. So that's still to take with a little bit of a grain of salt, because there is this concept of lean startup and like start with the bare minimum and just like run with it. I still think it's a little bit like the paradox of the survivor is I don't think this one, but basically the tale of the winner is very big in this one, because it's like these people succeeded like that, but that might not always be a good idea.
That's not the only model.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But basically what they had in mind when they started their thing was like, okay, what is the most incredible experience we can tailor for people? Like what literally blew their mind for the price they're going to pay. And so they asked people, like a couple of selected people, what would blew your mind if we were to do like a whole inclusive vacation for you or something like this. And then they took it from there, took it down a notch to something that they could actually provide, and try to find out what kind of mechanisms or system were replicable to other people, other places, other type of activities, and started with that. And so again, it started with the people. What did they want? What did they have? What they thought would going to be cool. And because they had such great experience, the people that trusted Airbnb in the first place, they only had amazing things to say. And that's super easy to convince your neighbor afterwards, if like your own neighbor just don't shut up about the great experience he had with that that community or talk or whatever. So the whole thing is like, how can you blow the mind of the people you're trying to reach, and what can you actually do from there that is the closest from that, basically.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think it's like it's centering who those people are.
Yes.
And finding out what do they need, what do they want, what's been stopping them. And once you understand those things, whether it's wherever on the community marketing communication spectrum you happen to fall, things go so much better if you concentrate on your who first.
Yes.
But then of course you land in that, you start to see the catch-22 of it all, right? Because in the run-up, in the desire to know more about your users and the people that you're trying to reach, you risk starting to do the less ethical things or using the more invasive tactics. And I'm doing these kind of things, because that's a lot easier, right? You can collect a lot of data from someone online, and so it'd be a lot easier to know who they are and what they're doing that way. But that's the dark side.
If it's too easy, there is something about it, But that's true that it's very tempting. And technically, if you're doing that, you're supposed to be doing the right thing, and you're supposed to be seeing success. And a lot of companies are seeing success with this kind of method, because again, it does rely on mechanisms that are working, but it's just at the cost of a lot of things that we probably shouldn't sacrifice. So
yeah,
and it's just, and this is, I think, when kind of older techniques of getting people who have feedback that you trust, but also that is honest, have that group that you can go to kind of before you go to your wider community, and also really embed yourself in your community. See what is it that they're doing? What are kind of like their aspirations and hopes, and how do they interact with what it is, with your system or project or product? And it's just, I think that sometimes a lot of the data collection stuff, especially when it's that aggressive, like, let's find everything we can about you, it's kind of like, well, we don't want to do that work, so we're just going to.
Exactly. Yeah. And you miss a lot of the context, and you didn't earn that information. So the person who's going to have this kind of information disclosed is not going to trust you. So on a volume, it might work, but on an individual basis, you're just eroding that trust relationship that you're supposed to have with your audience.
Yeah.
So I think it's a great shortcut, but in the long term, it's
maybe not so. Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if there's a line or if there's a thing, because if you think about digital marketing and that kind of breakdown of privacy online, and how you can collect so much information from someone without them knowing, and it's obviously no one's defending that, right? But at the same time, if you go at it with good intentions, if you weren't doing it online and you went to like an event and you met someone and you talked to them and you found out basically all of the same information you could get online, they'd be a lot more accepting of it if it was coming from a good place, because you had that personal touch, right? And so it's just it's how it's perceived more than, well, maybe not more than what's being done, but
yes, but that's the thing. It's all about consent. It's like, did I agree, like, for you to do that, or did I not agree for you to do that? Because there are stuff that, like, I'm not trying to hide or anything, but also that's not something that I would like to share with my bank, for example. I don't know. It's like they have no business knowing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a little bit of a, it's just like a human relationship. You sometimes make a mistake, that's okay, but again, like, if you just make sure that your intentions are as good as possible, well, technically the community or your audience will keep you in check if you misstep or something like that, and they will forgive you if that was genuinely,
if it was genuinely a misstep and you go, oh, okay, we crossed a line there, we're sorry, we will do better by you in the future.
Yeah,
I didn't mean to share Léia's information with her bank.
Exactly. What I do with my weekends is my own story.
Cool.
Oh, goodness.
Yep.
Well, thank you for that. We're about to run out of time. We've got like just under a minute left, so I'll start wrapping things up. But if there's anything you want to say to the audience or people watching now, live or afterwards, this would be the time to say it. Except for, don't steal your data and give it to your bank.
Yeah. Don't do that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Don't steal people's data. Ask for their consent. Do user testing. Do user research. Meet people. Ask them questions and listen.
Excellent advice.
Love it.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard to do it, but if you can, it's fun and it's very helpful. Just open source is great. It's not hippies in a garage. I mean, who am I kidding? If you're watching this,
We all have
you're
home offices.
So yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us, Léïa. It was
so
lovely to speak to you.
much.
Yes.
And thank you to everyone who's been watching live and everyone who's watching not live.
Mm-hmm.
I hope you enjoyed. Remember, the desktop Indaba is tomorrow. The recording will be live on YouTube afterwards. The wallpaper competition's voting closes tomorrow morning as well. So if you haven't voted yet, get in there
Vote.
and vote.
It's hard.
Vote.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think of any questions or want to continue the discussion with Léïa, put them in the discourse thread, which is linked to in the doobly-doo down below.
And I have a Twitter that I sometimes use.
And she has a Twitter that she sometimes but doesn't actually use. Cool.
No, I do use it, but just like messages. Yes.
Oh, okay. Cool.
Or mention.
Well, thank you again, Léïa. Thank you again, everyone who's watching.
So much. And yes, thank you for everyone who came, who came to our early Indaba. And yes, we'll hopefully see you all tomorrow when we get to talk all about cups.
Woo! All right. Goodbye.